Now that we've talked about how to find a square root or an nth root, meaning a cube root, fourth root, fifth root, sixth root, anything like that, we can actually evaluate radical functions. So again, a radical function just means it's a function, so we're using function notation that has a radical in it somewhere. Could be a square root, could be a cube root, could be in some other root. Okay. If we're asked to evaluate or find a value of each function, so in this case the first one is f of 7, just like we would with a linear equation or quadratic equation or polynomial equation, we plug in 7 anywhere we see an x. We're inputting 7 for x and then using order of operations to simplify. So I have to simplify what's under that radical first. This is like they are grouped together. I have to get it down to a single number. So 7 plus 2 is 9. Then I can evaluate the square root. So square root of 9 is 3, because 3 times 3 would give me 9. On part B, I'm using function g. Function g is a cube root. So I have to remember to write that little 3, because if you don't write it, you'll forget, and you'll take a square root instead of a cube root. So I have the cube root of 9 minus 1. Again, subtract that first. 9 minus 1 is 8. And what times itself 3 times will give you 8? Again, if you're not sure, you can always factor. And you'll see 2 times itself 3 times gives us 8. So the answer is 2. On this next one, I say evaluate f of 0. So everywhere we see an x, we're going to plug in 0. 0 plus 2 is 2. And 2 itself is not a perfect square. So you need to pay attention to the directions on your homework. Do they want you to leave it in exact form, which should just be a square root of 2? Or do they want you to round it to a specific place value? Okay, so look for that. And then on part D, we want to find g of 10. I go back to my g function and say the cube root of 10 minus 1. 10 minus 1 is 9. And the most common answer I get is the cube root of 9 is 3. But we're not dividing 9 by 3. We're saying what times itself 3 times would give me 9, which is not 3, because 3 times 3 times 3 is 27. So the cube root of 9 is not 3, because 3 cubed is 27. So 9 itself is actually not a perfect square, or cube. 9 is only 3 times 3. I don't have anything times itself 3 times that would give me 9, or at least not a whole number. This is going to be an irrational answer, meaning a long decimal that goes on and on forever with no repeating. So you would either be asked to leave it an exact value or round to a specific place value. Alright, we've got some more here. These get a little bit more complex. This first one says if f of x equals this whole quantity here, evaluate f of negative 79 fourths. So we've got a fraction here. A lot of times students don't like fractions, but don't fear them. Just take it one step at a time. So just be a little bit more cautious with your work. Use a different color here so we can differentiate our questions. So I want to know f of negative 79 fourths. So everywhere I see an x, I'm going to replace it with negative 79 fourths. Alright, a lot of times I see students try to do 3 minus 2 because it's easy and it's there. But remember, a number next to a radical means multiply. So I cannot subtract those because multiply is more important. It's higher level of our order of operations than subtraction. So let's go ahead and simplify this square root first, and then multiply, and then we can subtract. So underneath the square root, I see I have -4 times -79/4. I'm going to make that whole number into a fraction, and we actually see that the 4's divide out. 4 divided by 4 is 1. Also, we have underneath, we have a negative times a negative. That's going to give us a positive. So now underneath that square root, I have positive 79 plus 2. 79 plus 2 is 81, which is great because that's a perfect square. What times itself 2 times would give us 81? That is 9. Again, we've said this whole time this is 2 times that quantity, so it's going to be 2 times 9. And I get 2 times 9 is 18, and 3 minus 18 is -15. Last one here. It's a little bit easier than the last one because it doesn't have any fractions. But again, pay attention to that index. This is a cube root. So I'm trying to find g of -7. This is a cube root of -7 minus 1. -7 minus 1 is a -8. And the cube root of -8 is asking what times itself 3 times would give us -8, and that is -2. -2 times -2 times -2 is a -8. To sum up, to evaluate a radical function, you replace the input, so whatever you're inputting for that value, in wherever you see in x, or whatever variable you're using, and then simplify using order of operations.